Erst super herzlichen Dank an Fabian und alle euch, dass ihr hier gekommen seid. Mein Deutsch ist super schlecht, so ich wechsle auf Englisch, wenn es alles okay ist. Und ja, fangen wir an. So, my name is Michelle-Marie Letelier. I'm a Chilean artist and I live here since 10 years. And yeah, my subject matter is around landscapes and minerals. I lived when I was from 7 to 16 years, I lived in the biggest open pit copper mine in the world, in the middle of the Atacama Desert. And this experience in my life was really important in my sensitivity, and then it was a very important moment for me that was like the motor to start my career as an artist, because it was a very special time. So, and it all started when after I lived there, I moved to the US, and then I went directly to Santiago, Chile, to live and study art. And during that time, the town where I used to live started to get buried under the earth, under the rocks, under the leftover material from the mine, because of two things. Because there was a new policy that said that the inhabitants couldn't live so close to the mine, and because the fuel for the trucks to take all the rocks after the mining process was too expensive in order to get too far away. So they decided to bury the city with rocks of the left material of the mine. So this topographic subversion was very aggressive for me, was very important, and I decided to do something about it, and that was like the decision, really the decision to work with this subject, to work with commodities, to work with natural resources and changing of the landscape. And what I decided to do after I finished the university, I started to go there like once a year to document this process. This process it took more or less 10 years to get almost the whole city or the whole mining camp buried. And it first started as a autobiographical documentation with black and white photographs, and then I decided to do installations with found objects of the abandoned houses, and then I used to do a lot of video. I was a video artist, so I used to work mainly with video and photography and installations, but mainly with video. And the last videos I did in this, documenting this mining camp, was first a very personal thing. My house, I did a performance in my house, my abandoned house, and then it became slowly within 6 years, into a little bit more community direction, asking the people, interviewing the people, what meant for them this transferring of this town, and what was the experience for them to see their own town and their own homes getting buried slowly. And then I started to see the whole spectrum of this symptom of the mining industry a little bit further, like to try to get the bigger picture of this. And then I started to think about, okay, what is a mineral? What is, for me, a piece of landscape which becomes a commodity needed in the whole planet? I mean, it's a very local piece of earth or piece of landscape that becomes a product that is present worldwide, in the cables, in every architecture, everywhere. So when I decided to come to Germany, I wanted to make a parallel with the coal mining And my first idea, of course, was to go to active coal mine in the Cottbus that belonged to Vattenfall. And I went with my camera, and I went to, like I used to do, like with my camera, registering all this mining activity. But when I went there, I was like, I can't do this, I can't do this anymore. I can't use video anymore. I confronted myself with a totally different situation, which was these huge machines, like digging up the earth, not like in Chuquicamata, where I used to live, which is like a huge hole, and you get the mineral out by exploding, and then you get the trucks, and then like very chemical processes. But in this mining, open pit coal mining, the machines were digging up the earth and then bringing the rocks farther away to process. So this experience for me, to see these huge machines eating the earth, was really like shocking. And then at the same time, I was coming here, I was learning the language, so I started to make kind of like a parallel between the machine and the language and the German culture, and the German culture or the language as a machine, as like a piece of Lego, And then I became obsessed with the machines. And then I said, all right, I don't want to do video anymore. I'm tired of working with this frame, with this. I need like something more material, more direct. And then I started to work with coal, with the mineral. Like I pick up the briquette like you use with for heating still in the Alpau. And then I started to do video and photography, and then I get dirty, and then I started to draw. And then I never stopped drawing since then. I started to draw these machines and getting like really like obsessed with this, This is a drawing I made. I started to make an interpretation of a machine that calls F60, that is in the south of Cottbus, that is the biggest, how do you say that? Conveyor belt. It's the biggest conveyor belt for mining purposes in the world. It took 3 years to build, and it only lasted 9 months because it was too big. It was too big to operate. And I have some other paintings called F60, a machine too big to operate. So that is, I started to get involved into this questioning about like, okay, what is energy? What is like human energy, labor, but also mineral energy? And what is coal used for? And then I started to get into the properties of the mineral. And I ended up my machine obsession with a dream I had. This is a polyptych. It's 18 pieces. It's 2 meters 12 by 3 meters 15 high. And this dream I had, it was like, I dreamt that it was a huge machine. I was like, just like in the end of the fence, looking at this huge machine, and this huge machine had like this how do you say, this pendulum, super slow, with this huge ball, like with the spikes, and then this movement was making a hole in the ground, slowly, hole in the ground, and then in one moment the machine was going to fall down because of its own hole. So for me it was like, and this was also like the same time that the Arab Spring started, so it was like what is going on in the world, and the decadence of the neoliberalismus, the decadence of the capitalism, and all this. So yeah, I finished with this drawing, this machine chapter, so if we want to call it. And then my last video was Wo fasse ich dich, unendliche Natur, which is a phrase taken from a verse of Faust from Goethe. And this is the video I did about this machine in the coal mining, that I worked it as backwards. So the machine was giving the earth back to the earth, to the landscape. And I connected it with some verses of Fausto, when Fausto speaks with the devil, and he wants to dominate the nature. So it's also about, and the texts are whispered by a feminine voice. So it's all about this dominance, this decadence of the dominance, or the anthropocentrical dominance of men over nature. And then, since then, Guatemala, I did this installation here in Berlin with some coal briquettes. So I really liked the reflection. It was super simple. I really liked the reflection of the light of the video on the coal briquettes. So I said, you know, I really like to work on the properties of the mineral. What is the properties of the mineral? Like heat and electricity. And and then I started to combine both minerals, copper and coal, to make hybrids. Then copper as a electricity conductor. So then I started to work with electricity. This is my first light installation. These are all coal briquettes, and in each one of them I made a hole, and then I put an LED light, and then I did like a package with the cable, and then I hanged them. These are like 90 pieces, and this is in a project room. It's like a ruin. It's called West Germany, in Côte Bucetois. And this line was across the whole room, if you see. So it was like a wave. And then it finished in this mountain, little mountain of coal briquettes. So since then, I started to get interested in the electricity, the physical properties, and then the same work, I did it in another context, in a truck. And the truck was mobile, was like a mobile exhibition, art exhibition, and then inside there was like a white cube. So I put all the briquettes again hanging, but in a line with 3 rows. And what was interesting that in this case that the truck was parked a little bit like not Gerade, not right, but a little bit bended in one side. So the gravity was playing a role here because the line is not perfect. So I really like that thing, you know, because it's really like I'm playing with forces that I cannot control at the end. And this is what I really like of working now with electricity, with physics, with scientific knowledge that I really just set up the conditions, and then I let the matter speak by itself. So, yeah, this is the work I did. It's called Energy, wie heißt das? Narratives of Energy Sway, 2014, and this, yeah. And then, this is another project. I started to work because of an invitation to exhibit in a group exhibition about magic, about, it was called the Magic Block, and the subject of the group exhibition was about what is magic, what is hidden, what is invisible, what you can't see in any form. I mean, it's really abstract. Some people work in a political way, some other people worked in another way. I decided to work in what is really the meaning of exploiting a mineral, and in specifically copper. So I started to investigate in the copper exploitation, but before it was a commodity. What was copper before? The Spanish invasion even. And the copper was exploited by the indigenous people in the middle of the Atacama Desert as a magic element, used for rituals, for orientation, for mortuary rituals. And then what I discovered that in this, because there was a route, there was always a very known route between the Andes and the Pacific Ocean. And there were a lot of exchange between different indigenous communities in the desert that exchanged products from the ocean and products from the mountain. And that meant that there was a lot of exchange in the desert. So this area I was interested, and then I started to investigate, and I discovered that this area that belongs to the north of Chile, Peru, and Bolivia is the area where you can find the most geoglyphs in the world. There's a lot of geoglyphs, and they're not protected at all. And what is interesting that is these geoglyphs, they were both with anthropomorphic forms and zoomorphic forms and geometric forms. And it's a complete mystery because there's only an oral tradition. There's no written documents about what they meant. Some of them are a little bit more obvious. There are llamas and animals, but some of them, this anthropomorphic or the geometric, we don't know. So it's a complete mystery. And in this area, you can find also the biggest anthropomorphic geoglyph in the world. In a hill in the middle of nowhere, in the top of the hill and in the middle of nowhere, and it's called the Giant of Tarapaca. I mean, it's called the Giant of Atacama, wrongly named. It should be called the Giant of Tarapaca. And it's really a complete mystery. I mean, you can see here, there's a car, so you can see more or less the scale. There's a car there. It's the road and the car, and then there's the figure here. And this figure, there's a lot of theories. But mainly this figure was set there in order to mark the route between the Andes and the ocean, and to orientate the people who were doing rituals, mortuary rituals, and commercial route. But also there are some other theories that say there's a moon calendar. So it has to do with the moon calendar or moon phases. And what is interesting here is that this figure had something in the left hand, but it was erased. If you see, it's like a sword, or it's a blade, or we don't really know. There's 1,000 of theories, but it's really a complete mystery. So I decided to work with this figure, and what I did is that I took the figure, and then I made an electric circuit about it. So I divided the figure in, I think it was like 18 or 16 different photoplatinum, and I made the drawing by hand, and then I made the process with the photoplatinum, and each photoplatinum was joined by copper cables, so it was all like united. So with solar panels, 4 solar panels, 2 in each side, I gathered light, and then this light was transformed into energy and was running through all the figure, and then it ended up in the left hand. And in the left hand, I placed a compass, so every 1.5 minutes, more or less, this energy was burst, and then the needle of the compass moved because of the magnetic field. So it was a work about orientation, but also deorientation, and also, of course, about magic, because we really don't know, or normal people really don't know how this needle was moved. It was a very subtle movement, every 1.5 minutes, more or less. So it was really subtle, and the installation was also put in the same way, in the same cardinal points where the figure in the hill was. So this installation was shown first in Bergen, in Norway, and then it was shown in a museum in Santiago de Chile. So, yeah, with this work, I started more and more to get into the electricity and the forces of nature, and mixing historical facts and historical joints that for me were interesting. Parallel to that, since 7 years, I've been working with saltpeter. As you might know, saltpeter is sodium nitrate. It has many names, in 30s, more or less. It was the main income of Chile. In the peak moment, there was more than 170 different mining towns where they were exploiting the salitre, the saltpeter. And what is interesting to me is in 7 years I've been researching all this documentation about the history of saltpeter, but also the maritime transportation of the saltpeter, because it's this transportation of the saltpeter from the Atacama Desert going to Cape Horn to Europe, mainly England and Germany, was made in the last commercial sailing ship. So there is a connection for me, poetical connection between wind and saltpeter, both natural resources, both with a very, very different reputation. One is clean, and one has a historical negative connotation. Saltpeter was used as a fertilizer, as an explosive also. So then you have life and death in the same chemical compound. Although, parentheses, one told me that life is an explosion, but that's like, okay, we can talk about it. What is life? So yeah, for me, this dichotomy about this chemical compound, I find it really, really interesting. Also in connection with energy, in connection with the relationship between Chile and Germany. And this industry, I mean, this connection between Chile and Germany is very strong because, and science and art actually, because the Chilean saltpeter industry was doomed once German scientists invented the artificial saltpeter, the synthetic saltpeter. So in that moment, the Chilean saltpeter industry died. And it died really aggressively and really fast. Now you can go to the desert and you can find a lot of ghost towns, and some of them are protected by UNESCO and reconstructed as a museum, but you can find so many ruins and very interesting situation in the middle of nowhere in the desert, which are caused by this development of the saltpeter. I mean, the need of the saltpeter, the need of the saltpeter as an explosive. Imagine like after the Industrial Revolution, before the First World War. So let's think about the North and the South. Yeah, you know, the North, U.S. and Europe, they needed this element for warfare, but also they needed this element for the demands of the growing of the population. So saltpeter as a fertilizer. So there's a lot of relationship between this chemical compound that was locally natural found in the Atacama Desert by geological processes of thousands of years since the Miocene until this time. And it was transported through the force of wind. So this is what I've been dealing the last 7 years, gathering material, going to visit some places, starting in Hamburg, and then I went to New York to do a residency in 2014 for 3 months to investigate specifically a sailing ship that is located. It was located there since the 1975 as a museum ship. This ship was one of the last commercial wind vessels designed especially to go and pick up the saltpeter through Cape Horn before the Panama Canal to Chile, and then coming back to Germany. Imagine these were the last the last construction of technology, sailing technology. So there were huge vessels with 4 masts, the fastest you can get until 19 1920-something. And this ship is called Peking. It belongs to the Flying P liners, which was a line that was built by Reederei in Hamburg. It never had any relationship with the U.S. The U.S. people wanted just to have a large vessel to show it how it was. And in the year 2011, they decided to donate this ship back to Germany because they needed the pier. The museum is in a very bad condition. They needed money. They're in the middle of Manhattan. And the real estate wanted them to decay in order to buy the land. It's a very special situation with this museum, but then they decided to donate this ship back to Germany, where it belongs. And what happened is that the German people, the Germans from the Hamburg, they went to see the ship, and they were horrified because actually they didn't maintain the ship. They didn't do anything to the ship since 1975. You could go inside, and there's an exhibition, beautiful exhibition with real photographs of the captains, documenting the route of the saltpeter in the ocean through the Cape Horn, but they didn't do anything since 1975. You can see it's very old-fashioned exhibition, and it was in a very bad state, decadence, and it was all rotten. So the guys in Hamburg said, all right, we need a lot of money here, first to transport the ship back to Germany and then to repair it. So it was between 2011 until November 2015, they made efforts to get the money. We're talking about 120 million euro. So it was a lot of money. Finally, the German government decided to put the money. And right now, the ship is crossing the ocean right now, and it's going to be on Sunday in Brunsbüttel. It's going to arrive in Brunsbüttel, and they're going to take 3 years to repair it, and then finally it's going to be a museum ship in Hamburg. And the idea, well, I've been in contact with these people all these years. The idea is that this ship is not going to be another museum ship, historical museum ship, as there are a lot in Hamburg, but it would hopefully have art exhibitions and exhibitions that relate navigation, science, resources, art in one place. So yeah, it's a very exciting story, and I went there when the ship was a museum in New York. I tried to do stuff there. It was really difficult because the museum was in a very, they wanted me to pay $500 a day to exhibit. So I was like, okay, this is not possible. So there you have the last pictures of this ship that were taken last weekend. They took it in a dock shift. We're talking about, this ship is 100 meters long, so imagine the size, it's huge. And one of the works that I wanted to show in the ship, because my intention was to intervene the ship and to show some works especially designed for the ship, was this drawing that I did based on this navigation chart, which is called Winds and Routes, from Matthew Fontaine-Murray, an oceanographer in 1857. I found this navigation chart, which is one of the first charts that show you the direction of the wind for people who are navigating. So I decided to do a reinterpretation of this navigation chart, but with the modern routes, navigation routes. And this all happened during the residency in New York, when I started to really focus on this project and experiment with saltpeter and researching, going to visit this ship and so on. At the same time, I started to make crystals with saltpeter. I started to experiment. What is this salt? I started to make crystals, and then I came up with this series called Caliche Crystals. These are digital photographs. It's a series of 3. And this project later grew up as an idea I had to work with the growing of saltpeter in real time with the help of a microscope. And this is one of the projects where we've been working together with Fabian and Andrea. And yeah, I mean, the idea, and also in collaboration with Cristina Moreno, Spanish artist that is also a video mapper. So she has a lot of know-how on technology and how can we translate this image in the microscope to a bigger image that placed in the architecture. So the idea of these microscopical views are that we can show in a bigger scale, in a mapping situation, ideally outside of a building, in a facade, this very small, intimate situation of the growing of the crystals in the real time, of course. And other idea we have, more or less the same, with the microscopical view, is that we can make a composition, a video composition, and then project it in a tray, in a plexiglass tray, maybe on a crystal tray, like a tray with the crystals already formed, and then we can project the video. Parallel to that, in New York, I started to experiment with, of course, because I was playing with crystals. I was making like small trays with saltpeter dissolved in water, and then I let the water evaporate. And then one day I was like, what if I put electricity on it? So I started to play with it. And then I put 2 cables in one solution. And then electrolysis. What is electrolysis? Okay, so I started to experiment. And then I became with this thing, you know. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was working together with an engineer. He was telling me more or less what was this about, electrolysis. And then I was like, oh my God. Okay, we have positive and negative. We have 2 things, hin und zurück. And then I decided to just, you know, make this thing, but drawing with the copper the root of the saltpeter in the ocean, back and forward. So this is more or less as a sketch I did with the idea more or less I had, but it was all in my mind. I was terrified because it was all experiments, and then I had to exhibit this at the end of the residency. So I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, like my first exhibition in New York, and it's gonna be an experiment, and I don't know if it's gonna work. I was like super nervous. So at the end, it worked. So. This was the first version of this work called Offshoring Pathways. It was exhibited in the Museum of Los Sures in Brooklyn, in New York. And this was the result of the experiments, but it wasn't complete because the original idea was to gather the electricity from the wind, of course. So, but it wasn't enough time. It was only 3 months. It was a chaos, super stressful. So I just decided to gather the electricity from the grid and just make the first version there. But the idea always was to build this installation gathering the electricity from the wind. So this was more or less the overview of the exhibition. It was okay. I mean, all these works were meant to be exhibited in the ship, in the Peking, but it wasn't possible. So this installation, for example, was meant to be exhibited in the hall of the ship where all the cargo was going down, loaded and unloaded. So that was the initial idea. And then, since then, I've been dealing with how can I build a wind turbine that gathers the electricity, the drive, 3 volts I need for this installation. So, yeah, okay, I came back to Germany and I started more and more to work with scientists, with science, with scientific knowledge, with crystallization, with the geometry of crystals. So I went to the Mineralogische Sammlung here in the TU, and I spoke with a lady, Susanne Herting-Adke, very nice lady, and she explained me more or less the configuration of the saltpeter, the specific crystal configuration of the saltpeter. She sent me these drawings, which I found beautiful. And this was the source of inspiration to do more works. Drawings, I have done some drawings, and then I got fixed with this one especially, and then I saw this as more or less an idea of a wind turbine. Not obviously like as a horizontal axis wind turbine, but more of a vertical axis wind turbine, which I find more interesting. I don't know why, but I find it more interesting than the other one. So imagine like this crystal, this configuration of this crystal, but as a wind turbine from above, looked from above, more or less like this. I don't know if you can have the idea. So that's why for me it's important only 3 blades. And here I have a little video of the model I built. It's a video, but I don't wanna. But I can show you the video later. It's weird. What if I? It's all right, but you can imagine more or less how it would spin. So yeah, this is a process I've been having together with you guys. Trying to design this wind turbine, testing it, what could be the best solution for it. This project now is going to be shown in a Biennale in Buenos Aires in September. Probably also would be shown in Colombia in another art space. And yeah, the idea is to print these plates in 3D with a polymer, and to set it outside of the building, of the exhibition building. And that's it. Thank you.